right. Welcome to Easy Podcast number 15, 14. I'm not sure, but today I'm not sure how the audio is going to be because it's honestly shockingly dark and rainy out here. But I'm also not sure how the lighting's going to be, so there's that for like a positive, balances out. So first off, obviously we're going to talk about my hair. Look at how funny, look at how tall it is. It might be going forward a tiny bit sometimes now, I don't know. It's getting pretty long, pretty fluffy. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about a topic that I find quite interesting, okay? I've just started thinking about this. And, I think this is a topic that's relevant in more areas than just betrayal, but I'm gonna approach it from a perspective of betrayal, just for the sake of clarity. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about an extreme case that has an obvious answer to make it clear where I'm coming from. Okay. So imagine if you knew that you were gonna get hit by a car when you were 15, and you had an older brother, and your older brother knew that as well, and he was too weak to pick you up and carry you to the hospital. And imagine he just had to work out, twice a day. No, that's too much work. Imagine you just had to work out once a week for a year prior to you being 15 and getting hit by a car, and then he would be strong enough to carry you to the hospital and save your life. Otherwise, he would be too weak. Okay? Now, if he didn't, both of you are fully aware of this, right? So if he didn't work out and you got hit by a car and he was too weak, even though both of you knew what was going to happen, and you died because he couldn't carry you to the hospital, would that be your brother betraying you or not? I think that in that circumstance, it's still debatable, but I think that most people would agree that that is a betrayal. But then you could go, obviously, to another extreme and say, let's just face facts. In the average case, something like that isn't going to be betrayal, right? You wouldn't consider that betrayal, right? If you had no idea that was going to happen, and your brother got hit by a car and he was strong, but the hospital was 2 miles away, and you failed to carry him, that's not betrayal, right? But if you think that the first scenario is betrayal, and you think that the second scenario isn't betrayal, then clearly there's somewhere in the middle where it's unclear. Probably a lot of places in the middle where it's unclear. And also, if you don't agree that it's betrayal in my first example, you could come up with a more extreme example. I assume that there's something along those lines that you would agree would be betrayal, right? There's a fucking bus stopped in front of me. So I better move by the time this light turns green, or else I'm gonna throw a fit. It moved. We're in luck, boys. But one of the things that makes it feel less like betrayal is if it's unforeseen. Whereas in the first scenario, you know it's going to happen, right? But the thing is, bad things happen in life. That's foreseen. It's not foreseen when they'll happen or how they'll happen, but it is foreseen that bad shit is going to happen. So basically, the question would be, is it betrayal to suck? Is it betrayal to just be weak? and obviously not just physically. But if people that count on you are let down by your weakness, is that betrayal? Because you could have been stronger. You could have prepared yourself better, and you might not have known this specific thing is going to happen, but everybody knows that life is hard. Everybody knows that hard things are going to happen. So if you could have prepared yourself to better handle a bad situation and better help someone that you care about, but you didn't, is that betrayal? And like I said at the beginning, I'm just using betrayal because it makes the point clear, but you can extrapolate this concept, basically. The concept being that simply by foregoing the pursuit of making yourself as capable as possible, you are costing everybody else a lot. I don't remember how I started that sentence, but that's fine. So, obviously, you need to find a deep baseline moral framework to actually follow this idea to any kind of conclusion. But say that we take like a typical utilitarian perspective, and your goal is to maximize happiness, then it is your moral imperative to maximize your own competency and prepare yourself for to be able to handle bad circumstances. Okay, this car is quite retarded, if we're being honest, gentlemen. Quite retarded. But as I was saying, if you don't prepare yourself to handle bad circumstances, if you don't prepare yourself to be able to help others when the opportunity arises, or help yourself enough to help them, then you have failed. You know, actually, as I'm getting deeper into this, I'm realizing that this may not really be a new take. This may just be common knowledge. This may just be common knowledge. Of course, everybody knows that to be a good person, you have to be a good person. That's basically what I'm saying, isn't it? To be a good person, you have to be a good person. Wow. Really revolutionary, aliens. Really revolutionary. Maybe we do have to think of it in terms of betrayal. Maybe that's the whole point of this. Should you think of it like you're like okay, so imagine you get betrayed. What do? You don't trust that person anymore, right? So if someone fails to help you when they could have prepared themselves to be in a position to help you, but they didn't, assuming it's a situation in which they aren't sacrificing themselves to help you, which may be where this gets complicated, because preparing yourself could be sacrificing yourself in some ways. But I would argue that in 99% of these scenarios, the preparing yourself is actually benefiting yourself as well. So, should you view that as betrayal? Should you act as if it was a betrayal? Not in that you're insulting them or saying that being mad at them, but just in what you expect of them. Because when someone betrays you, you stop counting on them, right? So, yeah, you know, the more I think about this, the less worth even talking about this is. But, you know, it kind of segues into the other thing that I was going to talk about. which is what do you do with people who suck? You know, and I don't believe in free will. Okay, so I'm not saying that it's their fault that they suck, but like you know, let's take a classic example: the homeless. All right, and yeah, it might be bad circumstances. All right, it might not. It could be anybody. Anybody could be homeless. Yup. That's not the point of what I'm saying. Okay, what do you do with them once they're homeless? Once you're unemployable, and you're just a person not contributing to society, not able to support yourself, not able to support anybody else, what do you do with them? Now, this is obviously a question that is, you know, everybody has wondered this. This is a political question that there is no answer to, that we're looking for the solution for. And all the different states have their own different ideas of where the balance is. Okay, but that's just, homeless people is just an extreme example to show the point that I'm making. In general, what's going to happen to them? So like, say for example, you have a person who is incapable of being in a relationship or something. What's going to happen is they're going to end up being in a relationship with somebody else who is also probably incapable of being in a relationship, because anybody who is capable of being in a relationship is going to get someone who is also capable of being in a relationship. Because if you're capable of being in a relationship, you obviously are going to want someone else who can add to the relationship, and you don't have, and you know, it'd be an even trade where you're both gaining value for each other, which wouldn't necessarily happen if the other person is completely incapable of being in a relationship. So that's going to leave all the shitty people back behind, alone, left, lonely, right? So they're obviously going to get together, and then you're just going to have a bunch of fucking shitty people in relationships together, being shitty, and it's just going to suck, right? They're going to make each other worse as opposed to make each other better. Maybe they make each other better, but if they were in a relationship with a good person, then likely they would, the good person would make the shitty person better. And, you know, the shitty person might make the good person a little bit worse, but I would wager that more overall positive may end up happening. Because, generally speaking, if you're good, then it's on purpose, and you know how to do it. So, and if you're bad, then it's because it's something that you don't know. So if you're good at being in a relationship, it's because you know how to be in a relationship. And if you're bad at being in a relationship, it's because you don't know how to be in a relationship. Generally speaking, it's easier to teach people things that you know how to do than to teach people things that you don't know how to do, if you see what I'm saying. Now, of course, there will be cases where people who are bad at being in relationships think wrong things about how to be in a relationship, in which case it muddies the waters, but I think my point still stands. So overall, is it better to diversify or to just let the good people thrive and fly above the shitty people? Would that lead to a more productive society? I don't know, but I think it's interesting to view this in relationship to the rest of society, because the rest of society seems to be quite torn on topics like this, because there are things like food stamps, right? And the minimum wage, which, by the way, is irrelevant because nobody pays that low anyway. I mean, and let's talk about the minimum wage for a second, okay? It's so fucking funny. Like, no jobs pay the minimum wage. The ones that do, first of all, like, they're very rare. Like, the McDonald's, what's the lowest job you could think of? What's the most lowly job, easiest to get job you can think of? Like, McDonald's pays like $12 an hour. What is the minimum wage? Like $9? Okay, and then you're like, well, there are some jobs, right? Being a waiter pays less than minimum wage because they make money on tips at some places. So the one time that minimum wage actually would bring up the income of this job, they're just like, it doesn't count because of tips. What's the point? What's the point of minimum wage? What is going on? All right. They either need to up it or just get rid of it, because what is it doing? Nothing. The price floor or ceiling, I don't remember. I took economics a year ago. It was a while. It's above the minimum wage, so it's not doing anything. But it's still a decent example of society taking people who otherwise would be incapable of accomplishing something and saying, hey, we're going to force other people to support you. But the minimum wage is still pretty low. So they're saying, we're going to force other people to support you, but only a little bit. So who decided that line? Now, obviously, with the minimum wage, there were people who decided the line, and it's a hard decision to make. But we're making decisions like this constantly in life all the time. You know, another example is like scholarships. Generally speaking, we decided better people deserve the free stuff. You know what I mean? In regards to scholarships, because the better you are, the more money they're going to give you, and that's and nobody really has an issue with that. But people would have an issue if there weren't food stamps or if there weren't minimum wage. And I understand that one of these is the government and one of them is not the government, so that makes somewhat of a difference. But also, the government is just people. The other one is just people, and acts are moral or immoral regardless of whether or not they're done by the government. And I understand there's political, policy differences that make the nuance of this complicated, but my point isn't about what policies should or should not exist. It's just about the morality of giving shitty people support. How much should you support shitty people? That's the question. Tell me, how much should you? How much should you support shitty people? Hard to say. Hard to say. Well, this is a less fun podcast. I'm at my stopping light right now that I normally stop my podcasts at. So if you enjoyed the podcast more than my silly podcasts, let me know. Or if you enjoy my silly podcast more than this podcast, also let me know. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, but I don't remember what it was. So, good stopping point. Tune in next week for the Easy Podcast. This is a flesh wound. It's nothing remarkable. It's from jiu-jitsu. Have a good time, everybody. Have a good week. Have a good day. Bye-bye.